If I were to ask you what the oldest civilization in the world is, which one would you answer with? Egypt? Mesopotamia? The Indus River Valley? America? Okay, well, maybe not the United States, but when humans started to shift from bands of hunter-gatherers to sedentary agricultural city-states, they did so in fertile river valleys. Now obviously, the Near East is full of fertile rivers like the Nile, Tigris, Euphrates, Indus, and several others. But two other rivers to consider would be the Yangtze and especially the Yellow Rivers in China. In fact, China is one of the oldest surviving civilizations in the world. So, just how old is China? Brought to you by Blinkist. The area we would today know as China was first settled by hominids at least 1.3 million years ago by Homo erectus, which is phenomenally old, but not exactly a helpful answer, seeing as Homo erectus didn't necessarily have a complex culture that we would recognize today as Chinese. So let's fast forward by a huge amount. Neolithic settlements in China have been traced as far back as 10,000 BC, with rice agriculture on the Yangtze River having been carbon dated to around 8,000 BC, utilized by cultures such as the Jiahu culture, along with millet from about 1,000 years later. These cultures, along with many others, made up parts of what modern archaeologists refer to as the Yellow River Civilization, essentially the alpha version of China, consisting of numerous different cultures in different areas. Because, yeah, China is massive. More on that later in the video. Later on in this period, the Majiayao culture on the Upper Yellow River, around modern China's Qinghai and Gansu provinces, have also been found to have used bronze as early as 3100 BC, with the technology spreading in the following millennium. According to early Chinese legends, this was also not long before the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors ruled from 2852 to 2070 BC, said to have been either rulers or deities who, among many other things, introduced fire, agriculture, and housing to humanity, though their existence is generally considered mythical. This, however, brings us to very early dynastic China, with the semi-mythical Xia dynasty, essentially the beta version of what we would know as China until 1911. Before ascending to power in around 2070 BC, the Xia were said to have been a tribe under the legendary 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors. By the reign of Emperor Yao began the myth of the Great Flood, when the founder of the Xia, known as Gun, was tasked with protecting the region from the floodwater. Gun is said to have tried to solve this problem by stealing the magical ever-expanding Shirang soil from the supreme divinity, but, be it due to divine wrath or just bad engineering, the dams and dikes eventually got too tall and collapsed, flooding the nearby settlements and killing a lot of people. Emperor Shun banished Gun, who would leave his son, Yu, to finish the job. After 13 years of dedicated work, Yu would become known as Yu the Great or Yu the Engineer, having solved the flooding not by damming the waters, but by letting them flow out through irrigation canals and by dredging the rivers. Emperor Shun was said to have been so impressed by this marvel of engineering that he would pass the throne onto Yu, marking the start of the Xia dynasty, the first of China's many different dynasties. Evidence of the Xia dynasty's existence, however, is also scarce, with the dynasty itself likely also being somewhat mythical, or at the very least highly embellished by 296 BC when the bamboo annals describing the Xia dynasty in detail were written. They were, however, succeeded in around 1600 BC by the indeed very real Shang dynasty, who ruled for over half a millennium until being conquered by the Zhou dynasty in 1046 BC. All this making the Xia dynasty kind of a bridging point between the mythical and the historical, at least as far as records go. Obviously, we have so much more to talk about. Seriously, don't click away, there is more video after this. But first, do you want to talk about our sponsor and supporter, Blinkist? Blinkist is an app and a website that specializes in providing you with thousands of nonfiction books to read, but with a little twist that people like me would find especially useful, which is that they condense even the longest titles into 15-minute summaries. You see, part of the reason why I like to keep my videos so short is because I personally don't have the attention span for super long videos. which also means I generally struggle to read super long walls of text, which is precisely why I'm so thankful for a service like Blinkist, as they allow you to read books in the blink of an eye.
Holy crap, I'm smart now.
In fact, their summaries don't even cut out any of the most important bits, so much as all the padding that's really put into books to make them so long, but while also maintaining all the most important parts for understanding all the book's concepts. Though of course, you can also use these blinks, as they're called, to decide if a book is truly worth reading in full, perhaps with the audiobooks that you can also buy on the site. In fact, you can also listen to audiobook versions of the summaries themselves, and you can also download them for the road, and they don't even take up that much space on your phone. Some of the numerous different titles I would recommend are Prisoners of Geography, China in 10 Words, The Mukaddima, Chernobyl, The Silk Road, and so many others. If that all sounds interesting, do be sure to go to Blinkist.com/KhAnubis, where the first 100 people to sign up will get a 7-day free trial, and if you like it after all that, you will also get 25% off a premium subscription. Okay, now back to your scheduled content. So we've at least got an outline of the time frame we're looking for. The stories of the Xia dynasty and the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors, of course, tell a kind of cultural narrative for the beginning of the Chinese civilization and culture as we know it today. Either way, people have obviously existed in China for tens of thousands of years, and China is indeed home to one of the oldest civilizations in world history. Though of course, the beginning of China is hard to determine. Not just because it was so long ago, but also because, what do you mean by China? The idea of a singular China didn't come along until fairly recently in their history. Zidnaf already made a really good video about all this, but in short, all you need know is China's endonym, or the Chinese word for China, 中国, literally translating to Middle Kingdom or Central State, meaning China likely at first wouldn't have seen itself as a European-style nation-state, where there's a country called China defined by these borders where everyone in it is Chinese and speaks Chinese, so much as the center of world civilization itself, kind of like how the Greeks and Romans just viewed everyone else as barbarians. Actually, exactly like that, but in Chinese. This of course by no means disqualifies China's true age, but it does highlight how, the further back in time you go, the less China starts to look like one united kingdom, so much as a loose collection of somewhat related cultures, either under one government, or just clinging on to a life-giving river in a time, as my friend Jack Rackham put it.
Of course, this was back in the day when anyone more than a couple hundred miles away may as well have had antennae.
So while we have records of non-mythical Chinese dynasties dating back to 1600 BC, and maybe even 2070 BC, we also have archaeological records dating back way, way further. Of course, the question, how old is China, is kind of an impossible question requiring impossible sources to answer, seeing as this was all more than 4,000 years ago. If you want an actual answer to the question though, the founding of the Xia dynasty could at least be seen as a stepping stone to a better answer. Though of course, once again, China doesn't have a founding date like Rome or even nearby Japan, so much as just evolving into its current form over the millennia. Nonetheless, China most certainly deserves to be counted as one of the world's oldest civilizations, alongside the aforementioned Egypt, Mesopotamia, and Indus River Valley. And China's cultural impact can be seen in many ways all across Eastern Asia to this day. Thanks as always for watching, even if this video kind of just went in circles. Either way, if you liked it, please be sure to give it a like, share it with anyone who might be interested, be sure to check out Blinkist through the link below, and subscribe to learn something new every Sunday. Oh, by the way, I'm still uploading every Sunday, I just hope that's clear for everyone.